two of my favorite people. They've been co-host with me and correspondents with me from the beginning of this show. Mike Shoesmith actually joined me on the very first day years ago. He is the executive editor of PNN News and Ministry Network. And then Brandon Big B, who has been with me and co-host and in the studio with me for years and often calls in. Now, last week he didn't call in, couldn't call in, but he's here this week. So I've got both of them. Mike, Brandon, are both of you guys there?
Hey, guys, I'm here.
I am here as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's start off. Mike, now I know I was corresponding with you by email during the Tom Horn segment. You were going wild over that, and the Barry Soetoro segment. Yeah. So was I. And I know our listeners were as well. I know those are going to be some popular podcasts. But I know Brandon was listening as well. I was just talking to him offline. So, Brandon, you said you wanted to start off by weighing in on the Tom Horn segment, transhumanism, etc.
Yeah, no, listen, all of that is extremely fascinating, and it is very real for people who might still be scratching their head on that. And I wanted to give people a little more ammunition, if you will, on that.
Okay.
Listen, Ray Kurzweil, the big man at Google himself, when posed the question several years ago in a mainstream interview, you can look this up. It's on YouTube. The interview is saved. It was posed the question, did he believe in God? Kurzweil's response was simply this. I'm paraphrasing, but this is what he said. He says, right now, I do not. But one day, I will merge with the computers, and then I will be God, and then I will believe in God.
Right. Yeah.
Now, that's your big man at Google, folks. That's what the industry is working on right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mike, I'm going to let you weigh in on it too, because the thing that I'm trying to get across to folks, and again, I've got a whole chapter on this in my new book coming up. I'm talking about all the prophetic convergences since the rebirth of Israel. But as you said, Brandon, this technology is out there. It's being used. As Tom Horn said, Russia's using it. China's using it already. It's like prior to nuclear technology, people were whispering about it in coffee shops, and people said, "Oh, that's science fiction. Oh, that'll never be. Oh, that can't be. That'll never happen. We won't be able to do it. We'll blow ourselves up. We won't be able to do it." In the meantime, behind the scenes, Russia was working on it. Other countries were working on it. China was working on it. U.S. was working on it. We happened to complete it. We used it. We used it in World War II. And now we're in a whole new age of technology, and the same thing's going on, but now it's with biogenics, biometrics, transhumanism, right?
Yeah, don't be fooled that Russia and China are the only ones that are currently actively doing this. I mean, it's mainstream that the U.S. military is putting brain chips in Special Forces troops. I mean, that's just as documented as can be.
Mike Shoesmith, weigh in.
Well, you might want to include this in your book, too, Carl. A software company, Chaotic Moon, has developed what they call a tech tattoo, which would be embedded into a person's arm.
It's in my book. I've got that in my book.
Wow. There you go. See, I have not received – I'm an influential member of the alternative media, and even I have not received a pre-release copy of this book.
No.
But
not yet.
For the audience, they're going, wait a minute, a tech tattoo. Yeah, this would be embedded into a person's arm and could track the person's financial and medical information, according to WCBS. Rather than going to the doctor once a year for your physical, the tech tattoo can be something you put on your body once a year, and it monitors everything that they would do in a physical and sends that to your doctor. But in addition to the medical quote-unquote benefit, you understand the Bible says that if you don't worship this beast, the image, that you will be killed. So imagine the reverse effect of this. Yes, it can send vital information to your doctor, but what can your doctor do to you with this device? That's my question. And in addition to the medical benefit, quote-unquote, they state that those with the tattoo would also be able to store their financial information in them. So no more wallets, right? Everything will be digital and done through this tattoo connection to, Wi-Fi and so on. So the Bible makes this clear connection between this mark in the body that you won't be able to buy or sell without it. So the technology is becoming more and more mainstream here now.
Yeah, and I've got 3 or 4 chapters on that. I mean, you're right, because you see, folks, and Mike and Brandon and the people listening, I mean, all of this stuff and so much more that I can't give away. I mean, tons more. If you like what we're talking about, you're going to love the rest of it. I'm just putting it all in there with all of this research, all of it documented by science sites, tech sites, mainstream media sites, of course, the Word of God, drawing the biblical prophecies together. We're living in excruciatingly prophetic times, don't you think, Brandon?
Absolutely.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. And here's the bottom line. All of the technologies and systems are in place. They're not being developed. They're not being talked about. They're not being thought up. They are 100% in place for the beast system to come full swing. And just as soon as the world economies finish collapsing and cash and monetary systems are done away with, then we have officially entered that time period.
Right.
And not only that, but when the rise of the dragon, today, and you know what, this should be the biggest news story of the week, I think, is that one of America's oldest stock exchanges has just been sold to China. The 134-year-old Chicago Stock Exchange reached a deal today, Carl, to be acquired by a Chinese-led group of investors. We've been talking about this for months now. The dragon China rising and will eventually run the one world government, the new world order. It will prop it up financially. The leopard bear lion combo propped up by the dragon. Here we see China making moves on American stock exchanges. It is amazing.
Yeah.
Not only that, but if you look at the minority owners of that very stock exchange that was sold today, Mike, you'll find some very familiar names: Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and several others that are constantly in the middle of making these huge decisions, pulling these strings. Which, by the way, let's not forget, Ted Cruz's wife is a VP of Goldman Sachs.
Exactly.
A company that just agreed to sell off one of its holdings to a Chinese company today.
Thank you. That's exactly right. This is amazing. And people need an education on these guys that are running for president.
By the way, guys, did either of you see that clip or hear about it or read about it where Cruz was at a conference, town hall, someplace, or an interview, but there were people in the audience that could ask questions, and a guy asked him the question, said, now, Ted Cruz, how can it be that you did not know you were a Canadian citizen? How can that be? And he chewed the guy out. He basically said, I'm not going to debate you. I'm not going to argue with you on that. He said, all I can tell you is my mother was an American citizen when I was born in Canada. Therefore, I'm a natural.
Not enough.
Let me finish.
He said,
Let me finish. He says, he says, my mother was born in Canada. My mother was an American citizen while I was born in Canada. Therefore, I'm a natural-born citizen. That was his answer. So first of all, he didn't answer the guy's question. He never did. And second of all, because see, there's no way he didn't know. So in other words, he's a liar about that. And secondly, there's no way that he doesn't know that the answer he gave about natural born is not the definition of natural born. He's supposed to be a constitutional attorney, so he lied again and then moved on. Now y'all weigh in.
No, I was just going to say he didn't answer the question. He completely avoided the question. The question was not, was he natural born? It was, how did you know you weren't a Canadian citizen? He can't honestly answer that question and continue to run for president.
Right. And, I think the spirit behind Article 2 of the Constitution really does lay the groundwork for protections against foreign allegiances, foreign alliances to foreign countries. And Ted Cruz is violating, even if it's enough, which it's not, even if it's enough that only one of your parents is a American citizen, even if that was enough, he's violating the spirit behind the intention of Article 2 by saying, look, my mother was an American when I was born, neglecting the fact that his father was a Cuban national, and the connections to Canada are becoming more and more obvious. And the foreign entanglements here, which is what the framers intended in their own articles. They wrote about their intentions. They said, we're trying to prevent foreign entanglements here. And so the foreign entanglements with Ted Cruz, it's like an octopus with this guy. And why doesn't he, if he's got all this integrity and godliness and so on, so why doesn't he just say, look, you know what, we've got to maintain the integrity of Article 2 of the foreign entanglements provisions in the Constitution. I'm just going to bow out. There's my integrity card on the table. Please, Mr. Rubio, join me. Do the same. Let's prop up someone who is actually natural born and qualifies to be president and or vice president of the United States. Can we please ask Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio to step up and do that at least?
Yeah, Brandon, weigh in.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be great in a perfect world.
Yeah. Well,
as we all know, we're dealing with liars and with known liars and deceitful people. So you question the motives of known liars always.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, guys, listen, let's do this. Let's take a quick time out. And because, Brandon, you've recently been in Guatemala doing some missions work. But while you were there, you ran slap dab into cutting edge technology that is astounding. And you ran into it in the jungles of Guatemala, right?
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
The beast system tentacles are reaching the entire planet right now.
The jungles of Guatemala, you run right into technology that the beast system of revelation could easily employ right now. I mean, they're already using it, but it could be employed into the Revelation 13 prophecy. Oh, my goodness. Folks, we've got so much more to talk about when we get back. Guys, listen, I was telling you both off air, and I want to tell our audience, just got an email from Zev Porat. It's interesting because Zev Porat, of course, the Messianic rabbi and CEO and founder of Messiah of Israel Ministries in Israel, born and raised in Israel. He's in Israel right now listening. We have a huge Israeli audience. Zev Porat is a part of it and probably is the one that kind of got that huge audience started for us over there some years back. But anyway, guys, he writes in this email, he says, Carl, I'm enjoying listening to all three of you. He says, tell your audience that in Israel, they say that by next year, all schools will be working only by computers, no notebooks, no paper. All ID cards will be by computer as well. He says it's all control, baby, all control. So what do you guys think?
No, yeah, and listen, like I told you off air, I've talked about this right here on Freedom Friday before. That is what originally clued me into the thought that biometrics could be the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
Could be what John saw, is because years ago, several years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, maybe more than that now, Israel did a test period where you could voluntarily sign up for your identification cards to be biometric. And their thoughts were, let's do these test cases, get people to sign up voluntarily, see how it works. Well, right now there is legislation within the Israeli government for that biometric identification to become mandatory just within the next months or years.
Yeah. Wow. Mike, I want
First country in the world, Israel.
I know. It's almost like that prophecy of Israel coming back had to happen first so that the technology could come from it. It's amazing. Mike Shoesmith, I want you to weigh in on it. Weigh in on that, biometrics in Israel, et cetera.
Yeah, no, in Revelation 13:18 it says, "Here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, for it is the number of man." And when we look at when we examine the fact that man is a carbon-based life form, and the carbon atom is made up of 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons, the number of man, if man is a carbon-based life form, is 666.
Yeah.
So when we look at all this biometrics coming down the pike, there's definitely, I believe, the Bible prophesies a connection between our biological systems and this coming marking system.
Yeah, I agree, and I examine that in great depth in my upcoming new book. It's amazing. It's coming out this fall, but here it is spring, and I'm already talking about it because it's all it's happening before us. It's exploding before our eyes as we're talking. Brandon, tell us about Guatemala, the jungles, what you ran into.
Yeah, no, very interesting. What do you run into in Guatemala? Biometrics. All right, I'm done. No. Listen, my second trip to Guatemala, what an amazing country, amazing people, amazing place. But I was in a little bit more remote area of the country this time. Knew that going in, a little bit more dangerous area of the country. Not a lot of white people go there, and they like it that way there in these particular areas. As a matter of fact, people find this very interesting. In the little cities that we would come into at nighttime to stay and where we would, get our, food and drinks and that sort of thing, The banks there would not exchange our American money. Didn't want it. Just basically said, get out. We're not going to take it.
Wow.
Probably the only place in the world that would happen. But very interesting. Much of Guatemala lives as a third world country. Much of Guatemala. Now, keep in mind these little towns that we were coming to, you know, in the evening time to stay after we were done working out literally in the jungles. You know, I mean, don't think of a city by, you know, U.S. or Western standards, okay? I mean, very, very, very primitive. But unbelievable. You go into the bank. Now, we would not have had to do this exchanging money, but the locals, when they deposit, withdraw, or do their transactions, they identify themselves by the thumbprint of their right hand with a thumbprint scanner laying on the counter.
In the jungle.
In Guatemala, in a nation that very much of it lives as a third world country. Even more interesting than that, in the jungles, literally in the jungle, where through a translator, translating through 3 different languages, eventually into English, the local people there told us that they had never seen white people in their village before.
Wow.
We were the first white people they had ever seen. Yet, in this village of probably 150 or so folks, probably over a week's time, probably saw 10 or 15 different cell phones in the village. Touchscreen cell phones that, of course, they're all touching with their fingers and operating with their fingers. So, listen, guys, the technology is in place. The system is in place. It's just a matter of implementation.
And the UN Agenda 2030 to identify every human on the planet by 2030, which is only 14 years away.
Right.
Yeah. And the huge point of that is understand that if this biometrics identification system is what we see in Revelation 13, there are 2 major biblical players that 100% have to be alive and well and in position on the face of the earth right now. Antichrist and the false prophet. If this is that, they have to be in place right now. They have to be.
Right.
Yep. Hey, guys, listen, we're slap out of time. Folks, thank you so much for listening to the